Cool. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for coming along. To say this is intimidating is an understatement because there's some very smart people. I'm not going to be like highlighting or spotlighting any in particular hacks or anything like that, and I'm not naming any protocols. So yeah, sorry if you came to laugh at anyone in particular, but yeah, that's not what I'm going to go for. It's going to be very sort of abstract, sort of concept-wise. That's what I'm going to focus on. So I'm not going to show any smart contract code itself, but yeah. If you do have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm probably better at just answering questions than I am presenting, so yeah, just feel free to stop me and just say, hey, what about this? Cool. So yeah, I didn't even change my slide. I forgot that number 4 is not even in there anymore. But yeah, so I'm going to give you some background, talk about the AVM briefly, pinpoint some versions that were released and some of the sort of new opcodes that were useful and helped prevent added security concerns that you might be interested in. Then I'm going to talk about smart signatures and smart contracts and sort of their uses and also mostly the weaknesses and things that you should probably think about if you're using them. Then I think I just go straight to the Q&A sort of discussion session because originally this was just going to be a big open discussion where we sort of spoke about our experiences and whether you found vulnerabilities or you had vulnerabilities in your smart contract. We can just talk about them and hopefully all learn from each other. So yeah, I'll get through all of the stuff and then maybe if anyone does have any questions or wants to talk about stuff, we can get into that. So yeah, the background. So I'll try and fly through this because this should just be its own separate talk, if I'm honest. There's so much information in just the history of the AVM. I should have just done this talk, to be honest. But yeah, instead, I'll try and blast through this, then we can get to the smart contracts and smart signatures. So yeah, June Genesis, there wasn't actually any smart contracts available in that. It was literally just algo payments. So for a while, yeah, there was nothing other than just paying someone's account with algos. 2019, the very first version of TIL, which is Transaction Execution Approval Language, basically just you wrote some code that said, if this succeeds, that's a valid transaction. So you can construct the transaction however you like, apply this logic to it. If it succeeds, then it's going to be approved. And the address is derived from the logic. So if you modify that in any way, you'll get a different address. A couple of months later, it was 9 months later, TIL 2 came out. And that's where we got the very first version of stateful smart contracts, or smart contracts as opposed to smart signatures. This is where you can now store state in a smart contract. It's worth noting that you don't have application accounts at this point. So a very common design pattern is that if you want an account to have any form of logic, you would create a smart signature and a smart contract and sort of tie them together in a way to say like the application ID has to be this particular application ID. And then your smart contract would have your business logic and the authorization logic would be in the smart signature. And it's very difficult because it's easy to say the smart signature is going to do one thing and you don't know how many different ways the smart contract is going to work. But anyway, I'll try and speed through this. Relative positioning, which is a big part of, I'd say, a lot of smart contract exploits sort of came about before relative positioning came in. Yeah, I'll touch on that a bit more later. TIL version 4, this is when we started calling the AVM. Right, let's get to the next part, the 2022, mid-2022 to 2023. We got TIL version 5. This is pretty much, you can tell this is where JJ joined the ink, because things started getting way more exciting at this point. Application accounts started to become a thing. So it was limited to payments and asset transfers only, so you still couldn't do inner transactions to inner transactions. Took a couple of months later until application calls could come in. But yeah, I feel like I just forgot. Application accounts were here. So now the smart contract itself has its own account that can send assets. So you no longer really needed that stateless smart signature to be tied with it, because if you're acting as an escrow, you're receiving assets or sending them, you can just do it entirely from your stateful smart contract now with its own application account. That was sort of a big one for me, just knowing that the smart signatures, which very way more prone to vulnerabilities. You didn't need to touch them anymore. If you have a smart contract, you can just do it you can use the account that comes with the smart contract. Inner transactions. Fee pooling came around mid-2022. There's another one where you can now have a group transaction. You don't have every transaction has its own fee, so all of a sudden a transaction that has a 0 fee is completely valid. So it's another thing that you'd often have to check for in a smart contract. Boxes was cool. It's been a year and a half that we've had boxes now. I still think of them as a very new thing, but we have had them for a while. And then resource sharing was literally this time last year that was introduced. Till 10 is the current version that we're on, and the one interesting opcode that I point out is the global Genesis hash. Prior to that, pretty much any smart signature you used could be used anywhere, pro or con, and I'll get into that again a bit later. There's so much more that I could have spoken about there, but I'm just trying to blast through and just talk about the AVM stuff. So get into the smart signature side of thing. So a smart signature is account controlled by logic. It's also called a stateless smart contract or a logic signature. We just seem to use those words interchangeably. They're good for offloading opcode budget. So this is a reason as to why you would still want to use them, especially when we're getting into like the zero knowledge side of things. So if you have VRF verify as an opcode or any EC math opcodes that you're using, there's a good chance that you want to offload all of this into a smart signature that's dedicated just to that task. So you're probably still using an application, a smart contract itself to do all the business logic of whatever it is that it's doing, but you can offload that heavy stuff to a smart signature. So it's a good reason to still use them. Useful for paying transaction fees for, say, you're onboarding someone new into the ecosystem, the Algorand ecosystem, and maybe they've just set up a fresh wallet, they don't have any algos. You can create a logic signature that's going to pay for that transaction group, and it allows people to interact with your platform without a cost to them. So again, another good reason as to why you would use them. Similar sort of thing here is there was a game, Algorand, still is a game, who was created by Cosimo, that uses a smart signature, and I think that's another awesome way to use it, just because, so that smart signature was the clawback address for a couple of assets, and the whole point is that you basically just steal the assets from whoever holds it, so you don't need to interact with anything other than just applying this logic signature. So again, another reason why you should use it. And I put these in here because I can often talk down on smart signatures and try and convince everyone not to use them. But I just want you to be aware there are valid use cases for them, because often people will go, well, why do they even exist if there's just all these bad things for them? So as to the weaknesses of them, I would say they are the leading cause for early exploits. Probably the top 5 largest exploits on Algorand had a smart signature at somewhere within their design. Not to say that the smart signature was the weakness, but just the separation of the logic can often become quite confusing for the developer or even auditors, that you'll end up, if the smart signature, or you might rely on the smart signature to not do something or to allow something, but then the smart contract to disallow it, but then you can still use the smart signature just by going another route in the smart contract. So yeah, it's up there. Again, I'm not going to name any, but yeah, you could probably Google it and you'll find that the smart signature is being exploited. This is the big reason as to why smart signatures are so hard to write, is that the entire transaction is the user input. So as opposed to smart contracts that I'll get to later, when you construct or when you use a smart signature, the user is creating everything. They create the entire transaction and every field within it. And your smart signature is probably just saying, does this field equal that? And you're ignoring a whole bunch of other fields that are doing potentially malicious things, and unless you prevent against it, smart signatures are very difficult to perfect. Yeah, easy to create and hard to do right. Again, pretty much going off the point that I just said above. This is a big problem, is that once you do use them, once you've pushed them to the network, you can't revoke them. So if you're using a smart signature for a platform that you've created and it's running fine for 6 months, and then someone tells you about a problem that you've got within your smart signature, unless you've programmed in some sort of migration route, you're stuck with that smart signature being the way that it is. It's possible, and I have seen time and time again, where the smart signature does call a smart contract, and that is upgradable. So the person will end up putting the extra checks that the smart signature should have done into the smart contract, and you sort of have this mix of now different domains of, if you were to migrate to another smart contract, you also have to have something that the smart signature should have had in the first place.
Maybe one a technique that I use for that specific thing can be to have in the typically the smart signature is coupled with a smart contract. So if you have in the smart contract a field which has the ID of the smart signature, then you can swap the smart signature with a new one, an upgraded one, by replacing that field in the smart contract. So it's a kind of path to upgrade the smart signature from the smart contract if you have to.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, exactly. There are definitely ways around it. A lot of this, if you ever get someone that writes a smart signature or knows about smart signatures to an extent of how vulnerable they are, the chances are you've written one to then realize that you can just exploit it in many different ways. So the only way to write a good smart signature is to have written so many vulnerables to begin with. So it's a very steep learning curve. Kind of a joke, but they are a gateway to delegate signatures. If you think that a smart signature is great to use, then you're probably assuming that delegate signature is okay to use. I personally would never sign a delegate signature, at least not with my personal account. The way that I would do it is to create a brand new account, transfer whatever assets that I want to use for this delegate signature to it, and then sign that delegate signature with that special account. But at that point, you might as well just have a smart contract that says, here's an address, transfer your funds to that. It's common for people to want to make subscription models where rather than setting aside an amount of money, they just want you to sign a delegate signature and they will just withdraw the money as and when they want every month. But yeah, now if there is a vulnerability in that smart signature, in that delegate signature, your account is now completely exposed to it.
So you can revoke them, right?
A user can't revoke a delegate signature. So yeah, this is a big reason as to why this is a problem as well, especially for delegate signatures, is that they are network agnostic. You could say that's a benefit, but I don't. So if you sign a delegate signature on mainnet or testnet, you can just go take that, or anyone can go take that signature that you've now published and just go use it on another network, and that's still tied to your account. So many wallets would just say, do you want to switch networks from, say, mainnet to testnet? Some platform can come out, incentivize testnet, go check it out, use it. You can go sign a delegate signature that's in one, and then they can just go take it and hijack your account and do whatever they want on mainnet with it. So yeah, big problem that I don't think most people are aware of. I've had the conversation so many times, especially in Discord, to try and convince people that don't expect users to sign the delegate signature just because you think that's a good choice to use.
But they can revoke it by Ricky.
Oh God, I want to say no to someone.
You can Ricky it. Yeah, because it's...
You can Ricky, and the original signature is signed with the original account, and then it will not...
Does that check out, Joe?
Yeah, so because it's just a signature at the end of the day. So it's tied to whatever secret
it checks
key
the author address, yeah.
But that also means, that if I sign a delegate signature with like my Alice account, any account that I rekey to Alice can now use that delegate signature.
Yeah.
It's tied to a secret key.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, that is true.
But then it also means that if you get from somebody else like a signature, that somebody else can steal the key whenever he wants. So invalidating what you thought was a forever valid delegate signature. So
Yeah.
you cannot even count on the user signing it because he can always replace it.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is like delegated signatures for a subscription model or something like that to allow a platform to take something out of your account also operationally don't work because it doesn't prevent you from spending the funds that are supposed to be there.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I having spoken to so many people trying to do the subscription model, it's very much, you should probably make multiple different options and allow the user to choose whichever one they want to do. I'm all for creating a smart contract that you deposit your funds to, and then that sends it back, allowing you to withdraw it. So if I want to subscribe to Netflix for a year, I just upfront put a year's worth of funds in there and forget about it. And if I decide halfway through a year, actually I'm not using it, I can just withdraw them again. That's the way I'd go about it.
Yeah, and another problem is that it's not on chain. So there could be an account that signed like 1 million delegate signatures, and you would have no way of knowing or no way of seeing as a user what I have signed. Like you just have no ability to.
Until it's actually used.
Until it's used.
Yeah.
No, exactly. But touching back on the little timeline, as of January, the new opcode global Genesis hash is now a thing. So if you do write a smart signature and you don't want it to go on different chains, just check that it's being used on the chain you're expecting it to be used on. We had spoken about this for years, but it's literally only just been implemented in January. So use that. Cool. As for smart contracts, so a lot of the stuff that was in smart signatures, whilst it's still all valid, I will always try and emphasize just to steer clear of smart signatures in like 9 out of 10 use cases, or probably more than that. If you think you have a valid use case for a smart signature, just talk to me and I'll try and convince you. Yeah. I'll try and tell you why you should just use a smart contract instead. So as for smart contracts, almost always prefer them over a smart signature for anything. Again, there are use cases for smart signatures, which I try to highlight at the beginning. You have much greater control when it's used as an escrow account. So with a smart contract, now with an application account, if you want to send someone some funds, your inner transaction is defined exactly as you would write it. So you have let's say it's an asset transfer. You say it's an asset transfer, you say what asset it is, you say what amount it is, and where it's going. With a smart signature, obviously, if you only define those in your smart signature, someone's going to come and asset closeout or rekey. So you got much better control on a smart contract. It's always going to do exactly what you're asking it for. Obviously, if you're just taking the application argument as the amount and just putting it in there, that's on you for not validating the amount that's being sent. But I think that's way more expected as a programmer, that you're going to check your inputs like that. So upgradability, again, let's say you've deployed something and 6 months later someone comes along, a nice white hat comes along and says you do have a problem here. There's a chance that you can upgrade it if you've allowed for upgradability, which you have no chance to do on a smart signature. Cool. So smart contracts, what was this? Oh, weaknesses of smart contracts. Yeah. So it's still subjected to human error. So if you're writing about smart contract, you're still going to have a vulnerable smart contract. Don't repeat yourself when it comes to application arguments, especially in terms of foreign reference arrays, like foreign assets or applications, boxes. If you're expecting someone to pass those values to you in the reference array, don't also ask them to put them in the application args as well. An example would be asking someone to provide the foreign asset ID so that you can check that that's been given to you, but then going off and opting into another asset that they've asked or they've provided via the application arguments. Sorry. It's been seen. Zero amount when it comes to payments and asset transfers. If you're receiving as an application, as a smart contract application, if you're expecting to receive a payment, so you're checking the previous transaction groups for a payment to your address or an asset transfer or NFT to your address, don't just check that it exists as an asset transfer. You want to make sure that the amount is greater than zero, because a zero transfer is still valid, but they're sending you nothing. So if you then go and act off of the back of that saying, oh, cool, I think someone's just sent me an asset, I'm going to go opt into it. Well, if they send you nothing, you've just opted into something and you're probably wasting your fees. Another thing to keep in mind. Absolute positioning. So I sort of touched on this. Relative positioning should always be used. If you're writing a smart contract and you say that group position 0 is my payment, then we get into this vulnerability where you have a smart contract call that always checks application zeros doing this payment, and then that application succeeds. But then you can also have another application in the same atomic group that also just checks application 0. And then you do the same call again that's also checking application 0. And then you multiply the effects by 15, even though they all think they're valid, but you probably didn't intend to multiply the effects by 15 times. Whereas relative positioning, if you're always getting your index and saying, oh, check for the transaction prior to mine, you always know it's that payment transaction associated to that application call. Similarly to the one above, check the group length. So if you are, for whatever reason, using absolute positioning, then just check that your transaction group can't be exploited and they can't have multiple applications within that same group. I will say if you do that route, you're sort of killing composability, which I'm a big fan of. Really, you want to use relative positioning because you say you've got a nice group of 3 transactions. The fact someone can come along and do something that you might not have thought of, like a flash loan, and allow you to, they might borrow money before your transaction and send it back after your transaction. With composability, with a relative positioning, that's the thing. So I'm always for allowing the user to do things I'm not expecting, as long as there's no, risk of exploit in that scenario as well.
Yeah, also worth mentioning that ARC4 is relative positioning, by default.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm going to get onto now. What should you do? Use a higher level language. That's my main point here is that a lot of these things come from many years of seeing exploits where people have been trying to write TIL and trying to write PyTIL. And you can do it, but you really need to just understand the AVM at such a deeper level and understand all the different vulnerabilities to then protect against them. Whereas you use a high level language like Algorand Python or TIL script, my favorite, or TLish. A lot of these things will do the application argument validation and sanitizing for you and making sure that, I've gone blank, but they help a lot more. So I'd always recommend to do that. Adhere to ARCs, so ARC4, for example, when it comes to the reference arrays, it's a standardized way as to how to do it. You pass the reference arrays as are, and then the index would be provided as the application arguments. Static analysis, so TILA, so with AlgoKit, if you're using AlgoKit, you can do AlgoKit tasks analyze, and it's going to use TILA to do static analysis. You're bound to get a bunch of false positives, but it's way better that you get that and you can go look into it and say that they're okay, rather than just thinking that you're fine and just then deploying it. Also, it's customizable, so you can absolutely write your own checks within TILA and look for things that are very specific to your contract's design as well. And community audits. So recently, TinyMan has gone through a TinyMan governance protocol audit, and they used the community. So rather than going out and paying for one in particular firm to do a 2-week review of their code, they've gone out to the community, picked up spoke to other platforms and other individuals to have a look at their code. And because we sort of use it day in and day out, we're on Algorand 24/7, so we're way more familiar to actually with, the current design patterns and the languages that are being used. I'm all for this. I want to push this more. I think community audits are a big thing, and they should be encouraged by anyone writing a smart contract. You can do them way cheaper, obviously, with a community. I would suggest just starting off coming into Discord and just saying that you've written a smart contract, and probably just message me and say, can I have a look at it? I'm more than happy to have a look at anyone's code. And maybe we can start up a separate Discord channel and just try and do some weekly or monthly event where we all look at someone's smart contract and try and review things. Because that's where you're going to learn the most. If you're a part of a community that's also looking at these things, hopefully we can all be safer together. Cool. Right. So that was all I prepared. Does anyone have any questions or want to share any experiences that they've had either deploying something or just finding their own vulnerabilities? No, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much.